Hey guys, welcome back to my first video. Hope everyone's doing well. This is Ask RJ, and today's topic, I had a little bit of time where I was able to take a break in my office, and so I wanted to sit down and go ahead and put a video together. One of the things I wanted to talk about was just some of the amazing things going on right now in the world. It's forever changing technology wise, and some of the things I want to talk about today, maybe get you guys' opinions in the comments, that'd be great. But just kind of to share kind of my thoughts on how amazing it is. Things such as electric cars, autonomous driving vehicles, cars that are now going to be driving themselves. This is some huge breakthroughs in what we're dealing with. And also, finally, sorry guys, I have some notes here, is the sharing economy. What I mean by that is how we have new jobs coming out of things like Uber, Lyft, Airbnb, things where we're actually having a new economy created of jobs where people are able to take their time and assets and share them more easily than ever before and make revenue and income off of that. So, some amazing things happening, some amazing changes probably over the next 10 or 20 years. And so, I just want to talk about those today. Some of my thoughts on just all these amazing technology changes. So, let's get into the video, guys. Okay, guys, so let's start off with Tesla. And I do apologize about the sunglasses. Sorry, I do have a window right here in my office, and so the sunlight does tend to come in. So it's kind of hard looking at the camera without, my eyes getting right there in the sun. So one of the things I want to talk about was the electric cars. Now, this is just a huge change. This is going to be something that is going to change and revolutionize the auto industry in many different ways. And it's not just Tesla, but Tesla does get a bulk of the credit up to this point because they have been one of the market leaders so far, bringing in new options for electric vehicles. So let's talk about what are some of the positives of that. Well, a lot of people would tend to say that the electric vehicles they're going to be cleaner for the environment. It tends to be that there's good alternatives coming down the road between wind, solar, different ways that we're going to be able to generate electricity from without uh, things that are going into the environment. And so that is going to lead to people who, when they're running electric cars, there's not the fumes and things that can come off of the traditional vehicle. And so they tend to run cleaner. And one of the great things is that they are also very low on maintenance. There's no oil, there's no gas, there's no grease, there's no parts like that. So the oil changes, that's going to be a thing of the past. So when as far as maintenance goes, you do have the battery, which a lot of people are not going to be able to work on probably themselves like they have been used to working on their own cars now, just because of the technology and size of the batteries. It is going to require that special work. And so one of the things that is going to happen is that you're going to see these new industries be sprouted out. There's going to be people that are going to be making these batteries. There's going to be companies that are going to be servicing these batteries. And there's going to be companies that are going to be recycling these batteries. So there's going to be all new kinds of ecosystems and jobs that can come out of this new technology. Also, with the Teslas in particular, is they're a very nice vehicle. I've seen a few of them, never been in one myself, but the ones I've seen on the road, the models they've made so far have been quite luxurious. So that is one plus. Also, if you're going with an electric vehicle, things that I've noticed is that you're going to get a very nice vehicle, but you're going to be paying for it. Most of the Teslas up until their recent cheaper models were in that $90,000, $120,000 range. So that is going to be one thing to take into consideration. So the other thing with Teslas is that they are going about basically making battery packs for your home, things that you're going to be able to install at your home and that they will be being able to charge right from the wall units. I'm not sure the technology exactly behind that, but it's my understanding that it can convert to a normal plug and work with all of your other electrical in the house that's already there. And that is going to allow you to be charging the vehicle right at home without having to wonder where one of the special Tesla charging stations are and things like that. So when I think about the advantages that comes with that is, you're not going to be going to the gas station. You're going to be able to use your car during the day. You're going to be coming home and charging at night, which if you don't do a lot of driving, you're not going to be able to do far commutes at this point. By commutes, I mean maybe more like road trips. You will probably be able to at least commute to it from your office because you will be able to charge while you're working. But this is going to eventually lead to people being able to use their cars during the day without having to worry about it and just get their electricity, their fuel at night. Another interesting thing about Tesla is how they've gone and acquired Solar City. Solar City was the company that the founder of Tesla had a stake in as well. They do obviously solar, and they're also trying to incorporate their solar into the roof tiles that can be built right into the house. Now that was a play on them wanting to be able to have the technology, have the solar technology as part of their packages. So if they sell you a Tesla car with the Tesla battery system, they can also go ahead and sell you a new roof and new solar system to go on your house. And so that gives them a larger ticket sale. That gives them the ability to have more of their branded products on your property, a bigger sale, bigger installation. They're already out there installing, so it's kind of trying to get their volume to make up for maybe the pricing power that they do or don't have. So that's another thing. Now, also with the Teslas, the great thing about the electricity is the power. If you've ever seen the Roadster videos where the car goes from 0 to 60 and I think it's in the 2-second range, 2.5 seconds, and that's because they have maximum torque. It's not like a motor engine where it needs to build up. The power is already sitting at the wheel, so it's just instant power, which is a fantastic part of the Tesla vehicles. I kind of imagine this, if I'm imagining it correctly, would be like the drill. When you pull your drill, it's not a building up motion of spin, it's just instant spin. It gets all the power there at once and allows you to continue to work on that. So some of the other things that are interesting is also how the Tesla is, they're starting to change the market of how cars are sold. They are going out and they are challenging the traditional market for how automobiles are sold through dealerships. Tesla has said that they would like to do this directly themselves, that they would rather have their own stores with their own salespeople because this is a high value item. It's a specialized item. Not a lot of people know about all the features that they have, and so they do need to have very trained staff there selling these vehicles. And so it's my understanding that that kind of goes against not only the current model but also kind of legislature or laws of how vehicles were set up to be sold, that Ford can't operate its own dealer networks. They're required to have dealers. That's why there are in every city in America different car dealers, and that Ford doesn't also own those stores directly. I don't believe it was purely out of just convenience of building them all out. I believe there was some legality to that that required it to be that way. And so if that is the case, Tesla is trying to take kind of the approach that they're maybe more of a technology company, that they're not a full auto brand in that way. I don't know how they're going about fighting that, if they're just at this point ignoring the rulings and operating as they've been operating until a firm ruling comes down telling them they need to operate one way or the other. But it is interesting. They're not only changing how the vehicles are made, how the vehicles are powered, how the vehicles are sold, they're changing the entire ecosystem. Now, electric vehicles used to just be basically, you were talking about Tesla and a few small brands, very niche brands that were making smaller, bigger than go-karts, but kind of just little sports vehicles for the weekends. That was the main brand of electric vehicles you'd be referring to. Not now. Now all the brands are starting to get involved. You have BMW, I believe, has announced one. Chevy has had a half electric, half gas hybrid for quite some time. I believe it's the Volt. And so the other large vehicle manufacturers are coming to the table. So the days of only talking about electric vehicles as Tesla is starting to come to an end. And in my opinion, that is probably going to be better. That is going to be something that is going to allow, just more widespread usage. It's going to allow more competition, which over time will bring in different players making the batteries and different components, and it will just kind of force the technology to get better. So I do think that that is going to be good from an industry-wide perspective. Also, it helps to accelerate the process. If you have multiple brands that have large capital backing working on similar projects of electric vehicles, all trying to get their vehicles out for sale, it's going to increase the speed at which those get out to the market just due to the nature of competition. So I do think that will help the consumer as well. They're going to have more choices sooner than they would have. And so that is going to kind of change. One of the things I kind of wonder is, down the road as more and more people adopt them now, it's kind of the ratio, maybe it's 97% still gas and diesel powered vehicles and maybe 3% electric. It may not even be anywhere close to 3%. It could be over. My guess is it's not over, just based on volumes of cars I've seen, how many cars Tesla's been selling. I would think that the amount of total vehicles electric is under 3, but as that shift kind of takes place, so we have a need for a large amount of electrical charging networks to get built throughout the country to make these vehicles practical. If you're going to be out and about and there's only 5 chargers and there's 25, 30 people in that area that have one, that's going to not work. It's not like a gas station where they're on almost every corner. You're never wondering, am I going to be able to get gas in town? You know that there's going to be a gas station or one very close that you're able to go to and won't have to wait very long. So they're going to have to keep the charging stations moving along with the growth of the vehicles. That's something I think is a concern, kind of seeing how that's going to play out. But as the ratios start to shift, if they do take off, it could be 10, 20 years, we don't know. But as the vehicles move to, let's say we get closer to a 50-50, 50% electric, 50% powered by gas and diesel, how are those gas stations sustaining themselves at this point? They're going to have much lower volumes. Are we just going to have fewer of them? Are the ones that exist going to get bigger? Is the oil prices going to go down? These are kind of just interesting thoughts to kind of think about how electric vehicles, as they're coming in, will be changing that ecosystem that's been built up of auto mechanics, diesel mechanics, parts supply stores, gas stations. All these entire industries were built around a certain type of vehicle. Now, parts and distribution stores, I think they'll adapt. That's more of a market supplying sort of. That's more of a distribution channel where their scale allows them to distribute, and so they'll be able to put products through, whether it's for a gas engine or electric engine. They will have those components. So I do think that they can transition better than some of the other industries that are connected, just because they're going to supply the parts. If there's new parts that are needed, that's what's going to happen. With the mechanics, I start to wonder if I think they're going to have to, a lot of them go back, if they've been working on cars for a long time, it hasn't changed much. They've probably been, since they were very young, working on cars. Maybe they started very young to now. It's always been the internal engine, the gas engine, diesel engine. So the components of how it's built haven't changed. So in order for them to continue working on vehicles, if they now have a large majority of repairs needed on electric vehicles, they're going to have to be retrained and retasked. They're going to need to learn how those electric engines work, how the batteries work, what kind of components in there. So that's an industry where I think the big players will be able to have the infrastructure and financing to train their staff, bring them in, convert to that. The smaller shops, they may only specialize. There may be less of them specializing in the diesel and gas only, or if they're younger, have more of a career ahead of them, they may take the time and money to be trained on the electric vehicle. And the companies like Tesla and BMW, they may be having to roll out large training and abilities on these vehicles if they're going to have people servicing them. So it's kind of interesting to see not only is how we're introducing an electric car, which is changing the car industry, but it's changing the entire industry, the auto industry, how it's serviced, how it's delivered. And so that's going to be very interesting over time, I think, to see how that goes about, how the other players, how much market share they take from Tesla. Also, things that kind of be interesting is to see adoption around the world. Is this something that in higher population countries, India, China, where a large amount of vehicles on the road um, can be more of an issue than it is here as well. It is an issue here, but even over there, if they have a large amount of traffic and they're in a city, it's very congested, a lot of smog, things like that. So it'll be interesting to see if different regions enforce it more. If anyone does take a stance on enforcing you to have an electric vehicle, if other countries adopt them and buy them more. If it becomes more of something that's not just right now, it's more of a second car, local, affluent buyer. If they're paying $120,000 for a car, as that price comes down, will consumers that would have been maybe looking before at a Camry or a Honda or kind of an entry-level vehicle be jumping into electric vehicles. So this was kind of an interesting thought. It just came to mind while I was thinking of the video. Idea is that just kind of if you sit down and process what exactly is going to be happening with these electric vehicles, how much of it is going to change based on the new demand for infrastructure, parts, and maintenance and things like that for these vehicles. Another part of that distribution change I forgot to mention is tire shops. And that would be something I would continue to say is going to do fine. The electric vehicles need tires just the same as any other vehicle, and so people are going to need places to buy those tires, install those tires, and service those tires for a long time in the future. And so I think tire shops will continue to do well. I think whether it's electric vehicles or not, there's always going to be a group of people that doesn't want to install their own tires or deal with the maintenance, and they don't know which tire to get, so they're not just going to buy them at a Walmart and then put them on themselves. So that would kind of be an interesting thought. Let me know what you guys are thinking. If you guys are enjoying the videos, please make sure to give us that subscribe. Lets us know you're having a good time, that you're learning things like that, that you're going to want to see more videos. That's going to really help us. And stay through all the way till the end because I'm going to have a special announcement. So we're going to go and get into the next section right now, guys. Thank you for taking a look at this first section, talking about electric vehicles, Tesla, the market, how things are changing. And we're going to go right into the second section now. Thank you so much. Guys, welcome back to section 2 of the video. So in this section, I'm going to be talking about thoughts and just everything that's happening in the world with autonomous vehicles. And I specifically should have said more like autonomous equipment. It's not just vehicles. It's amazing how many things are being run either remotely, or without some kind of programming. So let's get into it. So the first thing that kind of comes to mind with the autonomous vehicles is the car, but we're going to talk about that in a second. We're going to first focus on what are other things that are right now currently running autonomously. Well, and the idea of autonomous typically is that it can be controlled, but it also, in my mind, is a combination of being controlled directly through a program, but also it could be being controlled through like a remote with a drone. But the idea kind of is that there's not a person needing to be physically in the item or at the item controlling. It can be done autonomously. So I think about the tractors, just all of the things that are going on right now in the agricultural community. They have these new large tractors, that there is an operator in the vehicle. There is someone that is there if needed, but once they've mapped out their field or wherever they're going to be planting or forestry, whatever they're going through, that using GPS is usually you'll see them kind of, if it was a planter, there'd be a GPS on either end so that it knows when it lines up at these 2 points that it's, going straight. And it can go the entire length of a field and plant the field, pick the crops, whatever it was designed to do, that piece of equipment, and no one is driving it. Once it gets down the end, it can turn itself around, or maybe that would be the only point where they would get involved. And then it will now be in another straight line, and it goes and does it again. We'll go and plant or pick up all the materials off of the tractor, out of the field, whatever it was designed to be doing. So that is definitely something that's amazing. Another thing that I kind of think of is these drones, whether it's personal drones for photography that we see, the DJI is driving around, flying around via remote, taking pictures, video, some just for entertainment, some they're even racing. There's a whole new sport of kind of using these drones almost like RC planes where they will race through courses. But also from a military perspective, they'll have drones that can do surveillance and things halfway around the world, and they're being flown, somewhere here or somewhere on a remote base, and there's no one actually in the vehicle. It's completely autonomous. So that is kind of, as far as vehicle goes, some of the amazing things that are going on with autonomous right now. Then you have things like robots. You think of an Amazon warehouse. Just think of how amazing it is that they used to actually walk all of the aisles and they would hand pick your items. If you ordered 5 things, they might walk around through that warehouse and they're going to pick up all of the items that you ordered. And so that to me was just amazing to think that that is kind of the path to where it's gone to now, where they have these robots that actually go around and they'll pick up the different cabinets that your items are on, and they'll bring them to someone who will pack them into a box and ship it. And then that vehicle, that autonomous robot, using pre-programmed routes and things, will take that shelf back to where it was until it's needed again. So huge things changing how the warehouse industry works, how the farming industry works, how the drone photography works. That used to all be done by planes and helicopters. If you used to want photos of a large piece of land or something, you would have to spend thousands of dollars to have an aircraft come and fly over the property and then have a professional photographer take those pictures. That can now be done with a store-bought drone. So it is amazing how that industry has evolved and what it is becoming. Let's get back into the main part of the autonomous vehicles, and that is actual vehicles. That is, at this point, usually small SUVs and cars is mainly what you're seeing being used for that. So I remember the first time I heard about it, and I think it was, at the time, it may not even been public. It may have been a leaked article that Google was testing these vehicles on some of their campuses. By campus, I mean their corporate headquarters. They have large pieces of land, and they had set a section of that aside, kind of making fake driving courses so that there was no human involvement, that no one could get hurt while it was still learning. And like I said, I can't remember if it was leaked and it wasn't supposed to be announced yet, and someone saw this vehicle driving itself, and that's how the story came out, or if it was a planned press release. But I remember seeing this Prius, and it had a camera sitting on top, which is rotating and taking all the pictures and data in. And they said it was driving itself, that it was going to do several million miles with someone in the vehicle, but the car was actually the one applying the power, the brakes, the steering, everything like that. And I remember just sitting there being amazed, like, wow, they've actually made this car that in a closed course can drive itself. And just think of how that gets smarter, and they bring it out on the real roads and give it real examples of things to avoid, how it's going to learn and get so much better. So that was something that was really amazing. From there, now, you kind of saw it in stages. It went from something just Google was doing to then it was something, I believe it was some of the higher end Audis, and there was a few vehicles that kind of got a hold of the technology as well and put a feature in there like it could help you parallel park. I think that was kind of the first breakthrough feature for the consumers is if you pulled up, you could let your hands off the gas and put it in reverse, and then the vehicle would park you, and it would apply the brakes, wouldn't get too close, had backup cameras, front sensors, and so that was on a very small scale, an autonomous vehicle, a vehicle that was running itself. So that was the first kind of then consumer part we saw. Then I think next I may have seen an Audi commercial where there was the Audi was coming down from a parking garage, and basically you could retrieve the vehicle with your remote. You could push a button and it would drive itself down and meet you. It would bring your car down to the down to wherever you were had requested it. And so that was kind of the next level for consumer. And then we got to a point where now it's something we hear about all the time, and in good ways and bad ways. Sometimes it's a mileage achievement of how far an autonomous vehicle has been able to go. Um, and then sometimes it's unfortunately something where there was an accident or something got in its way and it made a collision, and so those are parts that they're still trying to work out. But I look at things then the next level is that they're actually doing autonomous semi-trucks, large vehicles driving on the road. I believe they've already done several deliveries with one. There was a brand that had one, and they were working with a distribution company, and it had done several hundred miles on public roads. And so there was always someone in the vehicle, but to think of a vehicle that large, if something did happen, it could do a lot of damage. So it's kind of amazing when you think about it. There is actually, it's not something 10, 20 years from now. There are cars and trucks today that have this technology or using this technology day in and day out. And the main thing that I saw that was going to kind of take it to the next scale and was going to be interesting was when they started talking about how if these vehicles could drive themselves, there would kind of be twofold, two things that could come out of that. And so let's get into those. The first one of those it's a multi-step. This is one part, but there's multi-parts to that. So the first part is they claim that the vehicles are going to be safer. That when the vehicles don't have the human input, they are have sensors all around, knowing where all the other vehicles are. Eventually, they'll all be doing this. They'll be communicating with each other. That it was going to reduce accidents, DUIs, things like that, because the vehicle would be the one driving, communicating, and making the decisions, and it would always be focused because the computer doesn't fatigue, anything like that. So that was one interesting thing, and that can kind of be debated. It's going to be interesting to see if there's not a full adoption, meaning not everyone goes to the autonomous vehicles. It's kind of like the previous bit where we talked about the gas engines and the electric engines. How does that transition? So how do you have 10 to 20% of the cars autonomous and the rest not? And the autonomous cars are trying to make decisions in a perfect scenario where they have all the data and they don't have any data or control of knowing what the person who's actually operating their vehicle themselves is going to do. If they swerve quickly, if two vehicles swerve at the same time. So that's going to be the interesting part. If it's at 100% scale, everyone has one and they're all communicating, yes, I would tend to agree that it's going to be safer. There is this layer of communication, removing the variables of a car just pulling out in front of another car because they're all in communication and sync. But when you have kind of that middle adoption where there's a good amount of cars that have it, but there's still a lot that don't, how are they weighing in all those external factors? That's something that I think is going to be interesting. Another publicly brought up kind of debate is is the insurance. Is if a car, if you buy a car that's autonomous and it's making decisions, who is at the end of the day responsible for those decisions? An example that's often been given is if you have a vehicle that's driving autonomously and it's going um, towards a light, and a car is coming straight at it from one direction, another car is coming from behind it, and then there's a pedestrian off to the side. There could be a scenario where no matter what it does or which direction it goes, it's either going to be hit someone behind it, or hit pedestrians. And so, how would the computer process those things? If there is kind of a no way out of it, it has to accept one of those options. How has it been programmed? Has it been programmed to avoid the pedestrians at all costs and to, take the hit from the side or the back because it's estimated that's going to do the least damage? And at the end of the day, if it chooses to do one and now there's damage, and you didn't actively make that decision, you were sitting in the back, you weren't driving the vehicle, whose insurance is responsible? That's a very interesting debate of what's going to go on. Is it yours and you would have made a different decision, so now you're paying for the decision of the programmer? Is it the manufacturer who made the vehicle? Is it their programmer that they hired? There's so many complexities when you remove. Today, it's typically very simple. There's multiple drivers, and if the pedestrians were involved, we'll leave them involved. Then there would be pedestrians could be at fault if they went into an intersection when they shouldn't have. The driver could be at fault if they were going too fast, disobeying laws, and the other driver who caused the accident could be involved. So there is, at the end of the day, going to be someone responsible based on the circumstances of who was in the most wrong, who ran the red, who sped. And so it's kind of very easy to determine that and put responsibility on that person's insurance. Where if it's you're just in the vehicle and your vehicle does something, but it was done that off a design of someone else, you can see where these complexities come in. So go ahead and leave comments too, guys, down below what you think of how you would handle those complexities, or what you kind of foresee as that being an issue, not a big issue. Maybe we're overthinking and there's a simpler solution. So that would be something very interesting to know, kind of everyone's thoughts on that. But kind of the vision that's been given by people who have really studied is that eventually these cars will all be driving themselves and doing it safely. So if you were going down, let's say, from your town to 2 towns or 3 towns over to the main city, and it was an hour drive, hour and a half drive, in theory you could have 4 seats facing each other, be playing cards, be all in the back of like a van, relaxing, because you're not consciously driving the car. You're not needing to give your focus on the road and operation of that vehicle. So that is very interesting from a commuter standpoint, from just the daily stresses of driving, traffic, getting places. If you get that time back, where instead of sitting in traffic for an hour and a half where you're not getting anything productive done because you're only sitting there just because it's a requirement for you to operate the vehicle and the vehicle's taking you there, it's going to be, imagine, when you have a driver and you're the passenger and you need to get something done, phone calls, and you have the whole trip to do it. It's kind of going to be that for everyone all the time. Instead of having to worry about if you have a driver or you don't, you're always going to have a driver, so you're always going to be getting things done in your vehicle, phone calls, work. You can leave the office earlier because now you're working on the commute home. You can leave, and on the way down to, Disneyland, you're enjoying the family, talking about what you're going to be doing. So the dynamic really changes, and that is going to be something that's going to be very interesting to see how that happens. So how the insurance happens, how the drivability of things happen, that is going to be something that is going to be exciting to see. The other part of that is kind of eventually there's been talks about not needing as many vehicles. If if you think about it, a large portion of your time of your vehicle, it doesn't move. If you go to work in the morning, let's say you get there at 8 o'clock, you don't leave till 5, that car is now sat there for 9 hours. has not moved. If you go at home at night, you park your car, your garage, your car in the garage, another 8 to 10 hours not moving, and then all the rest of the time you're just at home. So we have usually a large expense in a vehicle for something that we don't use all that often, as much as we need to. It's purely out of a convenience to need to get somewhere. So there's been this idea presented that if there was enough vehicles, almost like an Uber model, just kind of roving around, always available, could people just kind of get in and out of these vehicles, run down to the store, a different vehicle picks them up and takes them home, a different vehicle takes the kids to school, and a different vehicle takes them out that night. So especially with the drivers, there's not a need to worry about if you have enough drivers or not on the network. You just need the assets, the vehicles you need enough scale for the area to make it work. So that is going to be very interesting to see how that would work, how if people could adjust to not having a car, where they're not used to just being able to come out, get in their car, they can wait a little bit longer for a vehicle like that to arrive. That would be something very interesting to see how that affects the ecosystem of the cars and how that affects them moving, like how people move throughout cities and things of that nature. So those are things to keep in mind. And actually, on different scales, in fact, sadly, one of the accidents I most recently saw reported was a Tesla vehicle. These Tesla and Lyft, I think they're in partnership with GM, are doing tests of autonomous vehicles, and it's kind of been a debate with their current drivers of, are you trying to replace us? And they say no, but then again, they're also running tests on these type of vehicles, so a lot of people speculate that they could be eventually trying to remove the need for the worrying about the drivers being available or not. So these companies, it's not far off as far as this is something that could happen one day. It's already happening. They are testing vehicles like this on roads, on public roads, on different scales today. And so it's just going to be more a matter of time of how long does it take for them to get it out on full scale, so that it is something that everyone is using, and that it's something that the economics makes sense to continue. So that's going to be one of the interesting things to see how that changes. So what we're thinking about with autonomous is how it improves farming, how it improves warehouse work, speeds and efficiencies, but also where do those jobs go? Something very interesting just to think about, kind of study how and where vehicles go. Do they become something that are no longer owned and they're just used, rented, kind of shared time, split cost? And also the insurance. The big thing with the autonomous is just kind of like, how does that insurance dynamic work out of who's actually insuring the vehicle, who's taking responsibility for the decisions it makes, and things like, I think about the semi-trucks moving goods and things to different places, just how much, how much more can they run if they're not having to stop and rest for, a driver who can only drive legally for so long per day. So things like that. It's going to be changing entire industries and ecosystems, and that's something that we're really looking forward to see. And so let me know, guys, once again in the comments what you're thinking, just kind of how you guys think about autonomous vehicles. Good, bad? You think it's going to make large improvements? It's going to slow things down? So look forward to that. Also, if you guys are enjoying the vehicle, once again, don't forget to subscribe. Really helps support us, really helps us show that we are having a good time with a community that wants to learn more, and it's going to encourage those additional videos that we're going to want to make to come out. So we're going to go ahead and get into section 3, and then we'll pick it up from there. Thank you. Hey guys, welcome back to part 3, and this is Ask RJ. So just continuing on this video where we were talking about the the different things happening in the world. We started at the beginning talking about the electric cars, Tesla, how that's revolutionizing things. It's doing amazing things in the auto industry. Second part two, you guys just saw, we were talking about the autonomous vehicles, which ties into part of the electric vehicles. Actually, I know Tesla is pretty advanced in their autonomous vehicle, of the car actually being able to drive itself for some distances on freeways and things. You still have to be available to take over it if needed, be in the driver's seat, but it can, help with kind of if people are stopping in front of you, it can lower your speeds, things like that. So we're moving into the final kind of section, just another thing really, changing the world as we know it, and that is the shared economy. And so let's get into that. Now, a couple examples of the shared economy. Uh, off the top of my head, the kind of big ones that would be the most mainstream would be things like Airbnb, Lyft, Uber, Postmates, things like that. These big companies. So those are name brands, but really, what it actually is, the idea of a shared economy, is people being able to take their resources and time. This is kind of my definition of it, and exchange those in the marketplace for revenue and money. So basically, an example would be if someone has a car and time to drive that car, they can trade both their space in their car and their time to drive the car around, drive people, in exchange for a certain amount of money. So it's just like what a taxi cab was doing in New York City. It was driving up and down the streets waiting for someone that needed a taxi. Instead, Uber, Lyft, they use an app. They bring the taxi to you. So it's low startup cost, assuming you don't have to buy a vehicle. If you have to buy a car, the startup cost could be pretty high. But assuming most people have a car that they're paying for with a main job or some other income, this would be considered a side income, side hustle, if you will. And so they're able to go out on a Saturday evening, so they have time. They're giving away their time and their car in exchange for fees. So if they go pick up 20 different groups of people throughout the night, they take them from one restaurant to another, from someone's house to an event, from an event to someone's house, vice versa. However, they're moving people around a city so that those people don't have to worry about having a car to park it, to pay for parking, to walk to it. If it's a busy event like a concert, the last thing you want to do is having to try and find parking. You'd rather just be dropped off at the front, go in and enjoy your concert, come back out. There's a vehicle there available to take you home. You don't have to fight the traffic, paying for the parking, things like that. So another example of that is it may not just be purely for convenience. It may be that the person is going out and they may want to drink that night or something, and so they do not want to be driving after that. So this gives them that option to go out, have a good time, do what they want to do, but also still have a way home at an affordable price, rather than taxis for longer distances, because they were the only option for a long time. Would upcharge for those longer distances, someone going 20, 30 miles home, and that may be the Uber driver's way home, so it's not a big inconvenience. So it's basically bringing them an opportunity to use their time and resources when they want to. That is another key part, when they want to. They are not required to show up 9 to 5 every day to drive the vehicle, to be available as a taxi driver. If they have 2 hours on a Saturday, great. They can open the app and they can get working. If they have 5 days a week, they may want to work those long hours. They can, but they don't have to. So the shared economy basically is the idea that there's constant need for things, there's constant need for rides, places, and so the shared economy is giving people the ability to become that supply at any time with almost no barriers to entry. So that is fantastic. Those type of jobs you would have had to apply. Just an example specifically to the taxi industry, there's a thing called the medallion. So I don't know if you guys know this, but On an example would be like a New York City taxi cab, the yellow cabs that you see on the streets. Not anyone can just buy a yellow car and start doing that. Excuse me. You have to have a special medallion, and that's how they control the supply. It's issued by one of the government agencies in the city. It's how they keep control of maybe, not having 200,000 people decide that they want to drive in New York. It would just be too many people. The supply would be way out of whack. So they try and strike a balance between supply and demand. They didn't do it very well. It's my understanding that the amount of medallions hasn't increased since the 40s or 50s, 1940s or 50s. So the demand has skyrocketed. The supply has remained same. Taxi prices have gone up as, part of that. And so the value of these medallions. I believe that they, when they originally gave them away or sold them, however the process was done, thousands of dollars they cost. Now medallions can be worth, before Uber, it has hit the market quite a bit because you don't need it anymore. But before Uber, a medallion could cost you $500,000, $1 million to set up operations in a city to be able to drive like that. So there's huge resistance from the current, one thing I've noticed from the current players in the market are resisting it like crazy because, as you can see, they have tremendous amounts of value in things like medallions. And when you set up a system for people to be able to earn an income, which I believe is better, with no barriers to entry like this, your medallion is no longer worth what it once was if they can just set up by themselves and they won't be a yellow taxi cab. One of the things that medallion offers is that you can, people can hail a cab from the side of the road. If you're not a medallion holder, if someone waves down a taxi, you're not supposed to be able to just stop. They have to have booked the ride with you prior. And that's kind of seems to be the gray area where Uber and them are coming in, is that this was a booked ride. It was requested on an app, then the car came. So they were not just driving by and soliciting those services. So, soliciting to give someone a ride, they could not just be waved down. So that is a huge change. Another example in this arena would be the Airbnb, which kind of a fun fact for you guys is a lot of people think Airbnb, it's a good sounding name, was just kind of a random name. It actually does stand for Air, Bed, and Breakfast, which is how the company started. The founders, I believe, had done a prior exit. They had prior sold, a large tech company, and so they did have capital, and they were going to be looking for their next idea. Good businessmen, once you sell a company, you have capital. They didn't just want to sit on their capital. They wanted to, reinvest it and build something even bigger. So they needed some money in the meantime. I think while they were working on this idea, they wanted to have some extra income. And so they came up with this idea that they had an apartment in San Francisco that people were coming to town for these events. I think art conventions, different kinds of events. And they didn't want to stay in hotels. Either one, they were booked. Two, they were being charged way over market value because of the event coming to town. And so they set up these air beds in their apartment and gave the people breakfast. Air, bed, and breakfast, Airbnb. And that led to them deciding that if they needed to fill this, market, they had space and air beds that they wanted to rent out to supplement their income. There must be a large group of people around the country that would have this same need. It's not something that would just be unique to them. And so they did set out. One second, I'm just making sure this is here for you. Okay. And so one thing they did do was they set out to then build that company. So it's kind of ironic in my mind that they had this idea for something that would be kind of their idea till they had the idea. This would kind of be what would hold them over, and it ended up becoming the idea. Another little fun story going back to Uber real quick is that Uber actually was kind of a similar story. The Travis, the gentleman who there was multiple co-founders, but kind of the main co-founder who helped build Uber, had recently done a large sell of his company, had a lot of capital as well. And Mark Cuban was one of his investors in his first company, and he went out, Travis, to pitch investors for this new uh, company later on. I think at the time he was still deciding what he was going to do. Took a trip to Europe. I think him and his friend kind of used these taxi services, thought how convenient that would be, and it's my understanding that they put them and a group of friends, enough to make it worthwhile, kind of had this driver driving around San Francisco, and when any of them needed a ride, they could use an app. He would come pick them up. Same thing as Airbnb. They said, if we have this need, how many other people do? So they decided to expand very smartly. I think they, obviously you start in your local market. It started in San Francisco. They actually approached Mark Cuban. He had success with their last company. They wanted to offer him to invest in this one. He said no, which he's later admitted was a big loss. He, at the time, couldn't get past the risk of letting strangers pick up strangers, and are you responsible for, if anything happened in the vehicle, an accident, or, God forbid, anything worse. So that's kind of an interesting thing, how a lot of times you have to pay attention, because you may have a company as you're going that you may think this could be my next, this could hold me over till my next big idea comes, and that could be the big idea. So you never want to discredit an idea. You always want to listen, and you want to see if it's something that could help, your company, and it's something that, could be the next company. So getting back to Airbnb, very similar situation. A lot of people have second homes, lake houses, extra space in their homes, or they're going to be traveling for a small period of time, let's say 1 month. So it was very hard in the old days to do any kind of agreements like this, because how would you advertise your house is only available for 2 weeks every 3 months? How would you get that out to people? And there was no practical way of doing it. And so they filled this niche that people who had extra space, guest house on their property, had a lake house, they're only there 6 months out of the year, could now have a way where there's a marketplace. There's a lot of people actively coming to this website who are looking for space in certain cities at certain times for certain periods of time. And so if they get a large enough database, they get enough homes that are on there, they can keep that demand coming back to them, because the people know they're going to find something. So it's kind of hard if you only have 10 homes on there, no one's going to come. If you have homes in every city all around the world, there's going to be constantly people coming back for different trips, and that will in turn, more people looking to rent will bring on more more landlords that have property. So the two kind of go hand in hand for growing the company. But bottom line is that they have created this entire economy where people can rent out extra space in their homes, and now can become, landlords on a mini scale and bring in that extra income. That, spare bedroom, if they're in a nice town where there's, a lot of tourists, could have sat there 9-10 months out of the year not used, and now 7 out of those 9 months they can have it rented out, bringing in a side income, and usually meet nice people that are traveling. And so it really is kind of eye-opening how the economy is changing, and to the point where I've seen entire people buying homes in certain specific areas that are highly trafficked by visitors and tourists, just so they can be Airbnbs. They will actually go out of their way to buy the property as purely an investment. They were never going to live there. They were never going to stay there. It's just that it can be a great Airbnb. They'll have companies manage it for them, and they will get a good return on their money. So that entire dynamic of how that's happening is just amazing to me. Things like, let me take a look at my notes real quick. So, another one. Okay. So, another thing that's part of this kind of, shared economy is, I don't know if you've noticed, I've had a lot of Amazon packages be delivered to my house that were not delivered by the post office, UPS, or FedEx. None of those three delivered them. They were delivered by independent service contractors that are now working for Amazon directly. Amazon has built out a network of delivery vehicles. These are people that may have been prior delivery drivers at other companies. These are people that have never been in the business and just got in. There is an entire new economy being made where people can rent out, just like Uber, for their time and vehicle, can rent out to move people. They can now move items and packages. They can become mini networks of delivery companies, which is huge in the day of e-commerce and how to get packages out quickly, how to get packages delivered very quickly. And so these kind of things, options are just amazing. It truly is amazing how these um, companies are going about implementing programs that reward individuals to come and work for them as contractors. In the old days, Amazon would have to try and compete, a FedEx style company, to compete with Amazon. Now, to compete on the delivery. Now they're able to go out, they're able to put out ads, put out things for drivers, they're able to attract tens of thousands of driver applicants. They're able to get the cars bought through those drivers, and they're able to start paying them per mile or whatever arrangement they come to. They can build large networks very quickly because there's this entrepreneur spirit, there's independent contractors that, because of all these new opportunities, are used to working for themselves and want to work for themselves. They're looking for opportunities like this. So that is huge. That is amazing, the kind of capital that is going into these kind of things, and the kind of attention that they're getting. As far as things to consider, when you look back on how this kind of affects things, is it's a lot like the Tesla kind of scenario. Is where does it end? How far does it go? So if you have a job force where, let's say, 85% of the people operate some kind of small business, and people either work for a small business all the way up to large businesses. Most people work for someone, unless they're, and even those, and then we'll even categorize those that don't work for themselves, or those that do work for themselves and own a small company, but they hire people. So they may own a construction business, but they own 20, hire 20 employees. We're actually talking about working for yourself, by yourself, as an independent person. It's a different model. You are actually working for yourself, but you're not creating any further, job. It is a job on your own terms. So it's kind of like, where does that dynamic go? How many other jobs are going to shift to this more consultant type, not specific hours kind of learning a skill such as social media? So instead of working for a company 9 to 5, you may work for 20 companies a couple hours a week. You're kind of running your own agency. So I look at most jobs and I start to wonder, and it's kind of saying, if you guys have any thoughts on this, put it in the comments, but where exactly is that going to go? How many jobs will become more one person has a skill and they share that amongst many companies, versus one individual works for one company with that skill? And so where that will finally all shake out in the world economy is going to be very interesting. And I think it can be adopted different in different parts of the world, different age groups. I think, the older workforce will still be more traditional, most likely. They'll go towards kind of finishing whatever career path they started on. Still used to kind of that standard 401k retirement, but a lot of the younger generation, they're more used to and wanting maybe they have two or three jobs, two or three opportunities that they're working on, but they're on their terms. They may Uber on the weekends, deliver other things during the week, and then have their house rented out part of the time. So they have multiple streams of income, and they're approaching this economy in a completely different way. And so that's kind of the most interesting thing for me is how big companies that need large workforces are going to be able to incentivize and retain their talent rather than the talent, the workers realizing that they have skills that can be shared amongst multiple people and platforms and give them free time as well. So how that finally will go, that's going to be interesting to see. But that's kind of my thoughts on shared economy. I think it's a great opportunity. I think it provides a lot more people that may have been out of work while they're waiting for a traditional job the ability to quickly get into working, quickly making an income. I think that's great. I think it allows people more flexibility to have more income because they can work more jobs, they can work longer hours. Some people may want more than full-time hours and they couldn't get it at their normal job. So it really allows you to work as little or as much as you want, and that I think is fantastic, and that's really going to be an improvement going forward. So that's part 3. We're going to go into the conclusion, guys, and thank you so much. Don't forget to subscribe if you're enjoying the content. We're going to be coming out. That bonus I was talking about is we're going to be putting together a schedule for future upcoming videos, so look for that. That's going to be coming soon, and that will kind of give you guys an idea of what you're subscribing for, what you can expect, and we look forward to seeing you on future videos. Thanks so much. Bye. Okay, guys, just want to thank you one more time for stopping by, finding our video. Really hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for staying till the end. Hope you guys got a lot of value out of that. Kind of gave you guys some ideas to think about. There's nothing good or bad with it. They're all good, good changes in some ways. And so it's kind of just thinking about more of that dynamic of, as the world progresses. We came from a time where most people rode horses. Now we have cars. So there's always this constant evolution, of the technology that we use in the world. And so that's just something that I think is kind of an interesting topic to look at, something to kind of get you guys thinking, discussing different things. So just to recap, we looked at the electric cars, how that's changing whole industries, autonomous vehicles, how that's changing how we drive, and finally the shared economy, changing how we work. So hope that gave you guys some good things to think about. Once again, thank you for staying till the end. This is Ask RJ. Really hope you enjoyed the video. Please don't forget to give us that subscribe, and we'll see you on the next video. Bye-bye.